ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة خلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله قولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد, to proceed, the best of speech is the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal, and the best of guidance is the guidance of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the worst of all affairs are those affairs that have newly been added into the religion. Every newly added affair in the religion is an innovation, and every innovation is a misguidance, and every misguidance is in the fire of hell. We ask Allah to protect us from innovations, misguidance, and the fire of hell. Noble brothers and sisters, tonight, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we begin with a new course of study, asking Allah Jalla fi'ula to accept it from us, make it beneficial for all of us. Proof for us on the day we meet Him, not a proof against us. And the advertised course of study is a poem that ends in the letter Lam, such as called al-Lāmīyah, by Shaikh al-Islām Ahmad Ibn Taymīyyah, رحمه ta'ala. And as many of you know, in-shā'Allah, we're going to precede this poem by spending some time covering a small treatise written by Shaykh Muhammad bin Sālih al-Uthaymīn regarding important principles related to the names and attributes of Allah Jalla wa Ala. The reason we are taking this approach, instead of delving or jumping straight into the poem al-Lāmīyah, is because al-Lāmīyah has covered quite a bit of detail relating to the names and attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. For despite its brevity, quite short, it's only 16 lines, the author has managed, may Allah have mercy upon him, to make it very dense with knowledge, including some very sharp, incisive points with regards to the belief system of the Muslim relating to the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Such I saw fit, following the footsteps of Shaykh Muhammad Ibn Sālih al-Uthaymīn, rahimahullah, who at one point in time, when a similar book that contains issues related to the names and attributes of Allah was designated by the authorities as the curriculum to be studied in one of the schools in Saudi Arabia, he saw fit to write this introduction. This introduction that we're going to start reading tonight, bi'idhnillah, is actually Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen's idea on how to introduce the students to a book of creed. A book of creed that touches upon the names and attributes of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala and the issues surrounding them, especially with relation to the innovators and the deviants, how they tackle the matter of the names and attributes of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Shaykh Muhammad bin Sālih al-Uthaymeen, as many of us know, is a preeminent scholar, perhaps a household name in our time. A scholar that the Ummah has pretty much come to consensus, to an agreement regarding his rank in knowledge and rank in righteousness and practice. And likewise, he is known to have reached a very high level of mastery and proficiency, specifically when it comes to the names and attributes of Allah Jalla wa Ala, as witnessed by the fact that he wrote al-Qawā'id al-Muthla, a book that is considered intermediate level when it comes to this particular discipline, which is the belief system regarding the names and attributes of Allah Jalla wa Ala. So, for this reason, amongst the other reasons that lead us to this decision, I saw fit to begin by reading this treatise. As I mentioned, it's very short. It's actually composed of about 8 pages, medium-sized font. They're not very densely packed. And it contains only 4 principles. First principle is considered an introduction that covers the general approach that the Muslim takes towards the text of the Quran and the Sunnah pertaining to the names and attributes of Allah. The second principle out of these 4, is a principle related specifically to the names of Allah. And the third is one that relates specifically to the attributes of Allah. And both of these, the second and the third principle, have 4 subtopics underneath them. The author, rahimahullah ta'ala, details. And finally, the 4th principle is intended to cover how we respond to, how we refute people of innovation who take issue with the belief that the Muslims have in the names of Allah and in the attributes of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. We begin seeking Allah's help, asking Allah for guidance, beseeching Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this endeavor and to make it heavy on our scales. قال الشيخ al-Allāmah al-Imam Muhammad bin Sālih al-Uthaymīn رحمه الله وأعلى درجته في المهديين قواعد هامة في الأسماء والصفات, important principles relating to the names and attributes, meaning of Allah. قبل الدخول في صميم الكتاب أحب أن أقدم قواعد هامة فيما يتعلق بأسماء الله وصفاته. And before we delve into the heart of the topic or the meat of the book, I would like to precede by mentioning important principles relating to the names of Allah and His attributes. القاعدة الأولى, the first principle. في الواجب نحو نصوص الكتاب والسنة في أسماء الله وصفاته. Regarding what is obligatory towards the texts of the book and the Sunnah relating to the names of Allah and His attributes. This is extremely important. The Shaikh is highlighting the obligation that we must all observe when dealing with any text found in the Quran or in the Sunnah that pertains to the names of Allah, it pertains to the attributes, descriptions, qualities of Allah. الواجب في نصوص الكتاب والسنة إبقاء دلالتها على ظاهرها من غير تغيير، لأن الله أنزل القرآن بلسان عربي مبين. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يتكلم باللسان العربي، ووجب إبقاء دلالة كلام الله وكلام رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم على ما هي عليه في ذلك اللسان. Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, he clarifies the obligation and then he follows by giving the reasoning why this is an obligation. And shortly, inshallah, we shall also see the evidence. We shall also see the evidence from the Quran. The obligation with relation to the names, with relation to the texts of the book and the sunnah is to maintain their meanings is found in what is apparent and commonly known of language without any modification, without any reinterpretation. Why? The reasoning. Because Allah has revealed the Quran with an Arabic tongue that is mubin. Arabic is known. Tongue means language. Mubin means two things. Mubin is from bayan. Bayan is clarification. Mubin means a clarifying. It is a clarifying Arabic language. In other words, it is a perfect medium for the clarification of intent. What is the intent of the speaker behind his speech? The Arabic language is a perfect medium, perfect tool, perfect method to deliver intent. This is one meaning. It is clarifying. Mubin is clarifying. The other meaning is clear. Clear. The Quran is both. And the language of the Quran is both. It is clear and clarifying. Quran was revealed in language that is clear. It is not convoluted. It is not overly concise. It is not cryptic. It is not in need of an explanation for the most part. In fact, the majority of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be understood simply by being an Arab who speaks that language. The language that was prevalent in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The author then clarified that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam himself used to speak with that Arabic tongue. If this is understood, then it is obligatory to take the meanings of the speech of Allah and the speech of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they are understood from the principles of that language in that particular tongue. في ذلك اللسان. Then he goes on, he says, وَلِأَنَّ تَغْيِيرَهَا عَنْ ظَاهِرِهَا قَوْلٌ عَلَى اللَّهِ بِلَا عِلْمٍ. Pay attention to this. This is an extremely important point. And because reinterpreting the meanings based on other than that which is apparent from the language is attributing something to Allah without knowledge. Let me give an example of how this can be applied, just so that the Shaykh, his speech can be well understood. Imagine you were speaking to someone and you said, "Give me your hand." Your intent was, put your hand in my hand. Maybe you wanted to look at their hand, they have an injury. Maybe you wanted to hold their hand so you can, look them in the face and make a point to them. Give me your hand. If someone comes along and they say, this is not the intent. While this is what appears to be the intent based on the language, what they actually mean is, give me help. Give me a hand. You'll notice a couple of things here. Number one, they went into your intention without there being any good reason to go into your intention. Secondly, that they accused you of misspeaking. You intended to say, give me a hand, but in reality you said, give me your hand. Is this example clear? Is this making sense so far? جميل. جميل. جزاكم الله خير. What we're trying to say is reinterpretation in this particular case, trying to give it a different meaning, away from the meaning that is commonly understood in the language, is speaking about Allah without knowledge. The author says, وَهُوَ حَرَامٌ. This is forbidden. Speaking about Allah without knowledge is what? Forbidden. The evidence. لقوله تعالى إنما حرم ربي الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن والإثم والبغي بغير الحق وأن تشركوا بالله ما لم ينزل به سلطانا وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون. Say is a command verb. قل. And when you see this, most of the time in the Quran, it's an address to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He's commanded to repeat what Allah said to the people. So what is he commanded to say? Surely my Lord has only forbidden al-fawahish. Has only forbidden al-fawahish. Al-fawahish is the plural form of fahisha. Fahisha is every sin that is repugnant, that is disgusting, that is hated by people of sound moral composition, people who have not been tainted to the point that their tastes and inclinations have become corrupt. These people who are on the fitrah, so to speak, are capable of immediately identifying a fahisha without any need for anyone to point it out and say, this is a fahisha. To give an example, people who are untainted in this fashion, fornication to them, a man and a woman, falling into zina, into fornication, is immediately identifiable by them as a fahisha. However, once that innate goodness that is in us is corrupted, you may find examples of people that cannot identify that as a fahisha. This is corruption that has come later on, whereas originally people can identify it as a fahisha. So these are the fawahish, sins that are immediately described as or recognized as disgusting, abhorrent, filthy. Say, indeed, my Lord has only made al-fawahish forbidden, those that are apparent of them and those that are hidden. We learn from this that some fawahish are hidden and some are apparent in public. Wal-ithm, and sinfulness. Wal-baghya bighayri al-haqq, and transgressing without right. Every transgression is without right. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clarifying. This is called sifatun kashifa in the sciences of Arabic. Versus sifatun muqayyida, a description that limits the scope of the speech. On the contrary, this is a description that clarifies the intent of the speech. Transgression without right. In other words, al-ithm is between you and Allah. Al-baghi is between you and the slaves of Allah. Then Allah says, وَأَن تُشْرِكُوا بِاللَّهِ مَا لَمْ يُنَزِّلْ بِهِ سُلْطَانًا, that you associate partners with Allah that He did not reveal any evidence for. Again, sifatun kashif. Everything being worshipped besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being worshipped without what? Without evidence, without proof. وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, that you say about Allah that which you do not know. That which you do not know. This is proof that it is forbidden to speak about Allah without knowledge, to say about Allah that which we have no knowledge of, no proof of, no revelation to back up our speech. Now let me pose a question here pertaining to this ayah. What do you say about shirk? If someone asks you, rank shirk, give it a rank. How big of a sin is it? How serious of a sin is a shirk? What would you say? MashaAllah. جميل. Beautiful. جزاكم الله خيرا جميعا. جزاكم الله خيرا جميعا. طيب. This is very interesting. Now in this ayah, the progression is moving correct. Correct. This is very interesting. How the progression in this ayah is moving from least sinful to more sinful until you get to shirk. One would assume, based upon what the brothers and sisters have said, is that we should stop there. If we're moving from the lowest to the highest, from the least sinful to the most sinful, then we would stop at shirk, correct? Now look, Allah moved on and He added one more sin after a shirk. That you say about Allah that which you do not know. Why? It's a possible explanation for this. جميل. Al-Imam Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that the greatest of all these sins is speaking about Allah without knowledge. As for the reasoning why, it appears that speaking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without knowledge is the root cause of shirk and perhaps of all these other sins. Speaking about Allah without knowledge is what makes people feel that haram is perhaps not so bad. Speaking about Allah without knowledge is the reason why people may become confused about certain rulings and they feel like, well, this is not clear cut, maybe I can dabble in this. And certainly speaking about Allah without knowledge is the reason people believe they can draw nearer to Allah by worshipping other than Allah. People believe that they can draw nearer to Allah, closer to Allah by worshipping other than Allah. What led them to this heinous mistake, to this great disaster? It is somebody speaking about Allah without knowledge. Well, not only do we agree with the Shaykh that speaking about Allah without knowledge is haram, but further we go on and say it may even be the greatest and worst of all sins. There is no sin greater in the eyes of Allah than speaking about Him without knowledge. Then the Shaykh goes on to give us an example of how the previous speech can be applied. He said, مثال ذلك قوله تعالى بل يداه مبسوطتان ينفق كيف يشاء. بل means rather. Rather, يداه, his two hands, مبسوطتان are extended. ينفق, he spends. كيف يشاء, how he pleases. Altogether, rather, his two hands are extended. He spends how he pleases. This is the description of Allah. Allah's hands are both extended. And He is spending however He pleases, Azza wa Jal. He spends by day and He spends by night. And He gives those who ask and those who do not ask. He provides for all, mankind, jinn, and the birds, and the fish, and everything that you can think of from this creation. Allah Jalla wa Ala is the most generous, the one who is the sustainer and provider of all. This ayah came as a response to blasphemy spoken by the Jews against Allah. These wretched and blasphemous, filthy souls. They said about Allah Azza wa Jal, Yadullah maghlula. Yadullah maghlula. The hand of Allah is shackled. This is an expression by which they insult Allah Azza wa Jal. Their intent is to say that Allah has been stingy with them. Allah has been greedy. He has not been giving them. He's been holding back. And this is an accursed statement. Whoever says something like this, there is no place for them but the hellfire. For indeed, if it was not for the hands of Allah being extended day and night, we would have been destroyed. It is He that sends the rain. It is He that sends the winds. It is He that provides for us from the earth, from the heavens, from the waters. It is He Azza wa Jal that gives us food, multiple meals every day. And then this is what they have to say about their Lord. So Allah responded to them. He said, غُلَّتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ. Their hands have been shackled. The benefit number one we take from this is الْجَزَاءُ مِنْ جِنْسِ الْعَمَلِ, the punishment of the same type as the crime. They accused of Allah of being stingy. Allah made them stingy. The Jews have become some of the stingiest, most greedy, and hungry of all people. To this crime, speaking about Allah like this. Furthermore, Allah said, وَلُعِنُوا بِمَا قَالُوا. They were cursed by that which they have said. Yani they were kicked out of the mercy of Allah. Allah has shunned them and banished them from His mercy. Mercy that is so vast that it encompasses everything. وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْء. He said about Himself. And as for them, they are banned from it. They're banished. Now someone may ask, and they will say, well, we observe that the Jews sometimes have philanthropic efforts. They have these organizations that appear to be doing good community services, supplying maybe medicine here or food there or some kind of charitable program here or there. This does not line up with the fact that they are the stingiest of people. Shaikh Muhammad bin Sālih al-Uthaymīn, rahimahullah ta'ala, in his commentary on al-Aqīdah al-Wasatiyah, commented on this with a very beautiful and revealing comment. It shows that the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala was not just a scholar of tafsir and Quran, but he was also a man of reality, understood the inner workings of the world and the hidden politics behind a lot of things. He said rahimahullah ta'ala, if you examine these organizations very carefully, you will see that their stated goals are one thing and their hidden agendas behind closed doors are a different thing. They're just a front for accomplishing the goals of the Jews. And subhanAllah, we are now in a time where this has become common knowledge. Everybody has known it. The Shaykh said it all the way back when, before people wisened up, before people became privy to this. The Shaykh exposed it just from reading the Quran. There is no way that these people will give for the sake of Allah. It is impossible. They're too stingy for that. There must be some gain. They're pushing an agenda. This is why they have these fronts, these organizations that appear to be charitable, being funded by Jews. As soon as you see funding by Jews, look for the motive. Try to understand why they are spending. Coming back to this, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, بَلْ يَدَاهُ مَبْسُوطَتَانِ يُنْفِقُ كَيْفَ يَشَاءُ. Rather, His two hands are extended, He spends how He pleases. This is the correct understanding of the ayah. The Shaykh comments on this. He says, بَيْنَ ظَاهِرَ الْآيَةِ إِنَّ لِلَّهِ يَدَيْنِ حَقِيقِيَّتَيْنِ. What is apparent from this ayah is that Allah has two hands. If someone says to you, does Allah have two hands? You can confidently respond and say yes. And the proof is بَلْ يَدَاهُ مَبْسُوطَتَانِ. Two real hands. So it is obligatory to affirm this description to Allah. It's obligatory upon you. It's not optional to affirm this description to Allah. Why do we say this is obligatory, not optional? Because anyone refrains, then they're disbelieving in what is obvious in the Quran. What is obvious in the Quran. It is obligatory to affirm this to Allah And if someone says, what is intended here, إذا قال قائل المراد بهما القوة, or as some of the people of innovation say, القدرة, قلنا له هذا صرف للكلام عن ظاهره فلا يجوز القول به لأنه قول على الله بلا علم. If someone says, what is intended here is power, the word hand means power. This lines up exactly with the example that I gave earlier, how someone will play with the words a little bit to make it seem like you're saying something else, going into your intentions. We say to him, you are reinterpreting the words contrary to what is apparently intended by them. And this is impermissible because now you are speaking about Allah without knowledge. Now, let's examine this verse a little bit closer and see if we can fit the word power here. Rather, bal yadahu, his two powers are extended and he spends how he pleases. That makes sense? The answer is obviously no. What two powers? Who said anything about two powers? We have no reference to two powers of Allah Azza wa Jal. Then why are these two powers extended instead of used? And how is it that powers spend how he pleases? You can see how their contrivances achieve nothing in terms of aligning with the description of the Quran. With their misinterpretation, with their attempt to cover the truth, we end up with a Quran that is neither clear nor clarifying. We end up with contorted speech that is far less likely to result in guidance than it is to result in misguidance. You see, when we follow their method, the Quran immediately becomes what? Book of misguidance. Say how? We say because this verse is going to be read from the manabir on the day of Jumu'ah. This verse is going to be read from the maharib, in the masajid, Salat al-Fajr, Maghrib, Isha. This verse is going to be read in Antarctica and the South Pole and everything in between. This verse is going to be read to doctors and engineers. It's going to be read to plumbers and construction workers and everyone in between. It's going to be read to desert dwellers and city dwellers, males and females, adults and children. Guarantee do you have that all these people will not assume that Allah is talking about two hands. You see, according to them, if you believe that it's two hands, then you are sinful. You are misguided. You're likening Allah to the creation, according to them, according to these deviants. So based on this, the Quran is a book that espouses and pushes misguidance and deviance until they come along to fix the Quran and save the Ummah from the misguidance being spread by the Quran by giving us these reinterpretations. So far, so good? Are we still seeing eye to eye on this? Hi, Ikhwan. Just going to briefly repeat this. I want to make sure that we understand this correctly. Allah says, rather, his two hands are extended. He spends how he pleases. They are saying, rather, his two powers are extended and he spends how he pleases. Between the two sentences, if you compare them, his two hands are extended and he spends how he pleases. Very clear. No issues there. And his two powers are extended and he spends how he pleases. Very contorted, very weird, very uncommon. What two powers? leaves you with a lot of questions. You don't know what it's referring to, which two powers exactly. It leaves you with a lot of confusion. But not only so, but furthermore, there is another issue, which is that most people, the overwhelming majority of people who speak Arabic, will not understand the second understanding that they have come up with. Most people, the overwhelming majority of people who know Arabic, will understand what? Rather, his two hands are extended. So in other words, the Quran that we're commanded to read during our khutbah, Salat al-Jum'ah, we're commanded to read in Salat al-Fajr and Maghrib and Isha. Prophet ﷺ read to the Sahaba, that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum read to the Tabi'een, that the Tabi'een read to Atba'u Tabi'een, and so on and so forth. This Quran, the overwhelming majority of people misunderstand it. And not just misunderstand it, but misunderstand it in a way that leads to kufr. According to who? According to who? The deviants. According to the deviants, to the misguided, to the innovators. The Quran predominantly spreads misguidance. Because the apparent meaning of the Quran is misguidance. It is understood at first glance, based on the language of the Arabs, that this Quran was revealed to is misguidance. In other words, the Quran is a book that is predominantly a book of misguidance, save for their intervention. If it was not for their intervention, then all would be misguided by the Quran. And we say, Subhanaka hadha buhtanun azim. Exalted are you, O Allah. This is clear slander and blasphemy and lies and fabrication. Rather, we align ourselves with our Lord Azza wa Jal, who told us, and we see with our own eyes, that this Quran is revealed in a clear Arabic tongue and a clarifying Arabic tongue. It is crystal clear. It is also clarifying. It brings us out of the darkness and into the light. And we take from this ayah what Allah wants us to take. We take from it that Allah is generous, that He is not stingy, that He spends how He wants, and that both His hands are spending, not just one hand, both His hands are spending, and they are not only spending, they are extended. Allah's hands are extended and He is spending. Jalla wa ala. This is what we take from the ayah. We don't go past it. We stop writing. We stop where the Quran stops. We don't try to reinterpret to fit our own purposes. So this is the example that the Shaikh, rahimahullah ta'ala, gave, and he clarified how this principle can be applied, this example. And he clarified how following their methods leads to what? To speaking about Allah without knowledge. Now, before we move on to the second principle, let's stop and ponder a few points. Number one, so you've understood this. What is your answer to the question? If a question was posed to you, what would be your answer? How important is it to learn Arabic? According to the Arabic of the Sahaba, in the time that it was revealed, the Quran was revealed. How important is it to learn that Arabic? In light of what we just discussed, what would be your answer? جميل. جزاكم الله خير. جزاكم الله خير. In fact, we can go further and say that learning Arabic is critical for anyone who wants to engage with the Quran, to explain it, to teach it, to ponder over it and learn from it. and put it into practice in his own personal life. It's critical. You want to ponder over the book of Allah Azza wa Jal. When you get up to pray the night prayers, you need Arabic. So that you can take something from the Quran and you can what? Apply it. Move forward with it. If you understand this, you will understand something else. Many times when the people of knowledge, they talk about innovators. Many times, the people of knowledge are discussing the innovators. They repeat a phrase. And I recommend that you memorize this phrase. It's very short, extremely short, should be memorized. If you are capable of taking notes right now, you should take a note. They say, من العجمة أتو. من العجمة أتو. 3 words. من العجمة أتو. They were attacked from the angle of being weak in Arabic. This is the translation of this sentence. They were attacked from the angle of being weak in Arabic. Who was doing the attacking? The shaitan. What is the result of the attack? Becoming innovators. What angle did the shaitan attack from? What is the gap in their defenses that he found? And he took advantage of it. It is their weakness in Arabic. However, let us ask a question. Is being weak in Arabic a guarantee that someone will become an innovator? That guarantee that? Absolutely not. Okay. Well, why did they become innovators? Because they were weak in Arabic. Because along with weakness in Arabic, they added another quality, and that is what? They were willing to venture forward with their understanding without checking against the understanding of the Sahaba. They were willing to just go forward and fly with it without checking if anybody else understands the same understanding that they understood. And when I say anybody else, I mean from those whose understanding counts, whose understanding matters. In fact, we're commanded to check our understanding with the understanding of the Sahaba. We're commanded to do so. It is obligatory. How do we know this? Is there proof for this? Right, let's do this. Let's make this homework. There are 2 verses in the Quran that clearly indicate the superiority, the understanding of the Sahaba, of the texts, and that we should follow their understanding. One is in Surah Al-Baqarah and the other in Surah An-Nisa. This is homework. If you answer the homework correctly, you mention the verse by number. That's it. That's the homework. 2 verses, one in Surah Al-Baqarah, one in Surah An-Nisa, highlighting the importance of following the understanding of the Sahaba of the text of the Quran and the Sunnah. So, coming back to our main point, I hope the homework is clear. If maybe some of us can type that in the chat so that everybody knows what the homework is, inshallah. Coming back to the point we started with, after coming to an understanding with this weak Arabic that is not in line with the understanding of the Sahaba, they did not bother to check and see if people of knowledge who are following the Sunnah, following the Sahaba, have the same understanding that they have. And thus, they became misguided and they became innovators. Now, there's a phenomenon that we should highlight also before we move forward. That is, some of the Arabic terms that were existent in the time of Rasulullah ﷺ have survived today in text, but have not survived in meaning. What do I mean by this? There are some words that used to be used in the time of Rasulullah ﷺ that continue to be used today, but today they have taken on a different meaning. They're found in the common dialects of people, in the local dialects, and the colloquial language. However, they mean something very different from what they meant in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. People today, when they see these words, They recognize them. It's a word that's commonly used in my language. My people use this word all the time. We use it at home, we use it on the streets, and so on and so forth. Why then would they not venture to understand the Quran based on what they think is an easy word? Everybody knows this word and what it means. Well, they fall into this. These people have an excuse with Allah Jalla wa'ala. If their intentions are pure and they did not mean to ignore the understanding of the scholars and the Sahaba and so on and so forth, they have an excuse with Allah. And as such, we have to clarify the truth to them. If they misunderstand something from the Quran or from the Sunnah based on this, we have to clarify the truth for them, and they are excused. Once the truth has become clear, they are no longer at leisure to continue understanding the way they understood previously. They must cease and change their understanding, get in line with the understanding of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum. There's a funny story about this actually. It is mentioned that a brother invited someone over for food. And when the guest arrived, he found that he was serving him a dish composed of animal fats. Nothing else. Animal fats. No meat, nothing else. But he refrained from eating the very foreign dish. This is not something I'm comfortable eating. So the brother responded to him and he said, we have a hadith, من عرض عليه دهن فلا يرده. Whoever is offered duhn, in today's parlance, duhn means fat, he should not reject it. The guest, upon hearing that there's a prophetic hadith, he said, are you sure? He said, yes, I'm sure. And he proceeded to eat. But it was so difficult. He asked him again, are you positive? He said, yes, there's a hadith, it's authentic. And he continued eating and he asked him again. And the man just insisted, you should not reject it if this is offered to you. Obviously, the word duhn, in the language of the Arabs in the time of Rasulullah, the language of the Sahaba, means perfume. Means what? Perfume. This is how sometimes people can misunderstand what is intended by the text of the Quran. So, I fear that we may not have a lot of time. Maybe this is a good point to stop, and inshallah in the next class we begin with principle number 2, relating to the names of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And if there are any questions, we can take them now. جزاكم الله جميعا خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم أصلح لنا نياتنا وأصلح لنا ذرياتنا وأصلح أقوالنا وأعمالنا وارض اللهم عنا ولا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا واعف اللهم عنا واغفر جميع ذنوبنا وصلى اللهم وسلم على نبينا محمد. طيب. If there are any questions, inshallah, we will take them now. What was principle number 1? Principle number 1, in short, is clarifying our obligation to understand the Quran and the Sunnah in line with the principles of the Arabic used by Rasulullah ﷺ and the Sahaba in their time. Another question is asking about speaking about Allah without knowledge. Is this also unforgivable? If it's the type that leads to shirk, the type that is shirk, calling to shirk, then yes. Calling to shirk is shirk. If it's the type that is calling to the worship of other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this is shirk. It is unforgivable. But if it is other than that, then my answer is I do not know. La a'lam. Okay, there's a question about the parables of the Quran. Parables are meant to be analogies, where something is an analog to another. In other words, you're supposed to try to see the similarities between the two things, the analogy and the real situation, and based on that, infer and extract benefits that help you deal with the real situation exactly as you would deal with the analog, with the parable. One such analogy that we can use as an example to explain this answer is when the scholars talk about the ruling on beseeching other than Allah to save you in things that only Allah can save you in. Scholars comment on this and they say, this is like a prisoner calling upon a fellow inmate to save them from prison. It's the equivalent to, the analog of this is a prisoner calling upon a fellow inmate to save them from prison. He's in prison with you. How do you expect him to save you from prison? And in other words, this is foolish. Such is the affair of shirk. When a person calls upon other than Allah Azza wa Jal to do something for them that only Allah can deliver. He's weak just like you. He's a human just like you. He's in need of Allah just like you. How would he be able to deliver to you that which is only in the hands of Allah to deliver? So the similarity is that you are in the same boat. You are both weak, both in need, both in the same trap. And how it helps you is it helps you by looking at how you would behave if you were in prison with that fellow prisoner. You would never ask them to take you out of prison because you know that they're helpless. And likewise, this is how you would modify your behavior in real life. Never call upon Allah, asking for things that only Allah can deliver. I hope this clarifies that particular question. Is it true that every light is part of Allah? No. There is no part of Allah in this creation. Allah is separate and distinct from the creation. Imagine that you shine a flashlight into the sewers, into the gutters. Imagine you have a blockage in the pipes under your toilets and you shone some light in there. According to this false belief, you would be committing a crime beyond description. This is a foolish belief. For someone to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be so intermingled with the creation. Not only is it foolish, but it is also blasphemous. It does not hold Allah Azza wa Jal in the regard and status that He should be held in. مَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِ. They have not estimated Allah His true worth. Those who say that Allah is mixed with, mingling in, around the creation. Allah is above all. Allah is al-Ali al-A'la. These are His names, al-Ali and al-A'la. These are Allah's names. Allah is al-Ali. He's the Most High, al-A'la. Most High, Jalla wa Ala. There's nothing above Allah. He is above all. وَأَنْتَ الظَّاهِرُ. The Prophet used to say in his dua, calling upon Allah, he would say, وَأَنْتَ الظَّاهِرُ. And you are al-Zahir. Then he would explain the meaning of al-Zahir. He would say, فَلَيْسَ فَوْقَكَ شَيْءٍ. There is nothing above you. Everything is beneath Allah. As for Allah, He is above everything. As for the explanation of the ayah, it's beyond the scope of this class. But I just wanted to answer this particular part of the question to avoid that misguidance. We will conclude with this. Jazakumullah khaira. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.